I'm going to ask that we all bow our heads in prayer.
Just start rattling off all the bad things I've done till you get tired of hearing about it, or what?
I'm going to talk to you about the judge of the fatherless.
I'm sure he doesn't mean to be so difficult, Mrs. Cleaver. It's just that he's at the age where he doesn't realize how important it is to keep a promise.
Which Bible stories you want to hear? It's just a Sunday school.
Thanks, Dad.
Welcome to the Faith of the Fathers podcast. I'm your host, Carl Gessler, where I'm reigniting the calling of men in the world. Every child should be a wanted child. That's the common refrain from people who want to justify abortion. I recently traveled to the Northern Kentucky University just south of Cincinnati with my two oldest children to be part of a genocide awareness project, which compares. It's an organization. The Center for Bioethical Reform. They put on these events. I've talked about it several times before, but they use massive pictures of graphic images of abortions compared with the pictures of the Holocaust and of black lynchings in the South, comparing abortion to these events, saying it's another form of genocide. You dehumanize the victim, and then you're free in your mind to do whatever you want to them. So that's what we were doing. We were on the campus. It's a very intense ministry. I love this ministry because I think that this is good preaching in action. I think that good preaching, which is extremely rare in our culture here in the West. I think David Wilkerson was one in recent memory that really did this well. But I think good preaching brings us to grapple with reality. It makes reality hit us in the face and say, now you have to deal with it. The gospel is not some pie-in-the-sky idea that is, for people who like to be spiritual. The gospel is what we're claiming when we say that we believe in the gospel is that we believe that somehow Jesus has addressed the problem of evil in the world. That's a massive claim. Right now we have globalists who are claiming that they're going to solve world hunger if Elon Musk can give $6 billion towards solving world hunger. How many times are we going to be told someone is going to solve world hunger by using money? It's never worked. It never will work. The World Economic Forum is another crackpot assignment trying to claim to be God because they think they can solve the world's problems. And I'm off on a tangent. But the point is, Jesus is for Christians, this is what we believe, that God has solved the problem of evil in the world through Jesus. The point of the resurrection is that death, which is the ultimate manifestation of evil in God's good creation, has lost because Jesus has gone through death and out the other side. It's not the same thing as when someone dies and we say that, they're in a better place. They've gone to heaven. That's not the goal. The goal is not getting to heaven. It's never been the goal of the gospel. The gospel has always been about rescuing God's good creation project. Jesus didn't die and then go to heaven. Jesus died and was bodily raised from the dead and now ascended to heaven, which means he's sitting at God's right hand, ruling and reigning over all things. That's the gospel. And so when we are here on the campus presenting this very evil thing of abortion, we're presenting it in pictures, dismantling babies, the most innocent, the most vulnerable of the human race. It doesn't get any more evil than that. And so it really forces people to ask big questions about the meaning of life and what makes us truly human. And like I said, the issue of genocide is the victim is always dehumanized because then you're allowed to do whatever you want if it's not really human. That's kind of the subconscious thinking. One of the things that people say, though, when trying to deal with this, one of the things they say is those pictures aren't real, which is giving away it's giving away the fact that abortion is evil, because if those pictures are real, it demands a response from them. It demands a change in attitude, in mindset, in belief, in action, because they can look at that and say, that is evil. I can't deny that. That's the way good preaching should work. We should be bringing people to the point when we're preaching. We should be bringing people to the point where they can see black and white. They can see good and evil, and they can make a choice. That, I think, is what the goal is. It's also the goal when I read the Bible, that I want to be confronted with Jesus in a way that makes me choose. Like, oh, I can see this is what Jesus wants. This is what Jesus is about. This is what evil is about. And now where do I stand in relation to those things? Am I good or evil? Am I on the side of Jesus, or am I against him? That's the goal of quiet time. That's a goal of reading the scripture. That's a goal of preaching, to bring people to this point of decision. And then what we do with it after that is what determines our future. And so people come up with different ways of justifying this very evil act. They can see it. They can say it's not real. Those pictures are fake. But one of the things that they say to justify abortion is every child should be a wanted child. And if you just think about that statement, and I've been told that statement many times, every child should be a wanted child. That is a confession, an admission that a baby in a womb is not just a clump of cells. It is a child. And they're saying that every one of them should be a wanted child. I agree. Every child should be a wanted child. And here's the good news. Every child is a wanted child. This is where the gospel is so profound, and where, why I love doing these campus events, because it has presented no greater opportunity to share the gospel in my life than at these events, where when someone says every child should be a wanted child, I can answer them, and I do answer them, that every child is a wanted child, even if the parents don't want them. I think Americans are pretty bad at evangelism. I'm not claiming to be an expert myself, but we are so busy trying to get people to get saved by saying, here is the Christian creed, here's our fundamental doctrines, believe these and you get into heaven. And that's just not the way it works. Like, people, when someone says about abortion, every child should be a wanted child, we need to recognize that they are talking at that point not about somebody's abortion somewhere. They're not talking about somebody's baby in a womb somewhere. They're talking about themselves. They're saying at that point, I don't feel like a wanted child. And this is where we preach the gospel. We don't begin saying, okay, here are the doctrines that you have to believe. Well, in a way we do, but it starts with this. You don't exist because your parents decided that you would exist. You don't exist because you decided you would exist. It is a complete miracle that you exist. C.S. Lewis, I think it was him, and if I claim it, then I'll be right, because whoever argues with C.S. Lewis, but he said something to the effect of, it's a miracle that God made sex to be such an enjoyable thing. Otherwise, we would never procreate, because we are not that selfless that we would just say, hey, let's invite another human being into our life that we have total responsibility over for 18 years or longer. And, we just wouldn't do it unless there was a trade-off. And God created this thing called sex that people do recklessly, and the result is that children are born. That's a really strange connection, and that's I'm just kind of completely murdering this reference to C.S. Lewis, but maybe this was more about it. He was talking about the strange mystery that sex would produce children. Why? Well, you wouldn't ever put those two things together, but that's the way it is. And my point is that people don't usually have sex in order to procreate. And the fact that it does happen is just strange. It's a mystery to us. And it's not like a scientific mystery. We know how it works. But at the same time, it's just like, why does it work that way? It just does. It wasn't my idea. It wasn't my wife's idea. It wasn't my parents' idea. It wasn't, I never chose to exist. It was God's choice that this strange act would produce children. And so when someone says every child should be a wanted child, the answer is you are a wanted child, and every child is a wanted child. Someone else put it this way, that no pregnancy is a crisis pregnancy. The crisis began long before they got pregnant. The crisis began when they were pursuing a relationship in an ungodly way. The crisis began when they didn't have the family backing that they knew that they would be loved unconditionally. I think it's incredibly sad that there are so many women who have had abortions because their boyfriend pressured them to, because their husband pressured them to, because their dad pressured them to. That is a crime. So every child should be a wanted child. And the argument is that if it's not wanted, it's better off not born. Underneath this very presumptuous argument, like I mentioned, is a cry for help. Who would make such an assertion except someone who felt unloved and unwanted themselves, suicidal? When we were getting ready for this day, the staff of CBR, we were all together and with the volunteers just talking about interactions with the students. And it dawned on me as we were talking about this that I said, there are many students who actually are actually envious of the abortion. And I found it very profound that at least twice, it may have been 3 times, I know without a doubt it was twice, 2 students very loudly said, "I wish my parents had aborted me." One man said that, and as he kept on walking, he said, "It would have saved me a lot of trouble." And this is the state of the upcoming generations. This is the result of the broken family. When parents get divorced, it is an atheist maker. When parents get divorced, it says to the kids, "You're not worth it." It says to them, "You're not really wanted." They may even, kids oftentimes feel like they are the reason their parents got divorced. There are many, many kids in the world who don't feel wanted. You cannot expect those kids to become good citizens. You can't expect those kids to do anything constructive because they aren't loved. They don't feel loved. And so here we come in when we bring up this subject of abortion, it forces these big statements to come up. When someone says, "I wish my parents had aborted me," that's a cry for help. And it's one that we can answer. These alarming statements should enlighten us to the fact that abortion doesn't exist simply because college students don't have self-control or don't take proper precautions. And many parents have set up their kids for problems because they allowed them, they put no barriers around sexuality. They just said, "Don't get pregnant," which already it's setting the table, saying that the baby is the problem and not the sin of adultery, not the sin of fornication. But it doesn't happen. Abortion doesn't happen because people don't take proper precautions. There was a guy there on campus who kept telling people to donate to Planned Parenthood because they stop abortions through contraception, which is, besides it being nonsense, the problem is not that people get pregnant. The problem is that people don't feel like they have value. The problem is that people don't actually want to be alive. If you don't care about your life, why are you going to care about someone else's life? Especially one that's going to require so much from you. If you already don't feel like life is worth living, why are you going to live sacrificially for someone else? You're just not going to. So how do we address it? The first thing we do if we're parents is that we need to show our children in word and in deed that they are wanted and loved. Many times we tell our kids we love them, but our actions don't say that. Many times, because we're selfish, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, our actions convey selfishness. Many times parents want their kids to act a certain way because it makes them look good. Kids pick up on that instantly. One of the things that I say a lot, and maybe I don't say it as often as I should because parents get mad when I say it, but you as a parent, You don't get to. You are not the judge on whether or not you're a good parent. Many times, parents will say, "I was a great parent," when their kid is criticizing them. But we don't get to. We are not the judges on our parenting. Our kids are much more accurate in evaluating our parenting than we are, because they're the ones who experienced it. They're the ones who are living with the ramifications of it. Kids are much more our mirrors than we would like to believe many times. As a matter of fact, the kid that you argue with the most is most likely the kid that's most like you. The things that we hate in ourselves are the things we can't stand in other people. So we need to be honest about ourselves, about our own actions, about our own words and deeds. Are they really communicating love to our kids? Does it really say to them that you are wanted and you are loved? And do we tell them that? I make a conscious effort to tell my kids how much I love them, I'm proud of them, and I want them. Because that's incredibly important, those words. And it also is a reminder to me, to my soul. Like the scriptures say, bless the Lord, O my soul. When I tell my kids, you are wanted, you are loved, and I'm proud of you, I remind my soul that those things are true. And that is it sounds pathetic when you say it out loud. Like, really, you have to remind yourself to love and want your kids? Yes, the answer is yes. Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And eternally, as long as I'm alive, my default is selfishness. My default is vanity. My default is trying to make myself look good. And so I have to remind my soul of what God made me to be, which is someone who reflects the image of Christ. And Christ was full of self-giving love. And so how do we address this issue? First, we let our children know that they're loved and they're wanted in word and in deed. And when we have failed in that, we need to go back and correct it. That is one of the most powerful miracles in the world, is a person in power, and all parents are the people in power. The person in power recognizing wrong that they have done and going back and making it right again, confessing their sins. It's so hard for us as parents sometimes to think of telling our kids, you were right and I was wrong, I'm sorry. But that is one of the most powerful things we can do. Nothing is going to make our kids trust us more than than when they see that we have the ability to humble ourselves. Sometimes I think, if we never made a mistake, our kids would love us and they would trust us. But somehow I think when we make a mistake and then we confess that mistake and say sorry, our kids trust us more than they ever would have in any other circumstance. They see that we are just like them. And when they make a mistake, they'll have the courage to come to us and say, you know what, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Focusing on our kids this way, getting in a habit of serving our kids, which doesn't mean doing what they say, like giving into all their demands. It means doing what's best for them, even when that means sacrificing something that I want, like the way I want to use my time, which is a big one for me, that's serving them, seeking their needs, to meet their needs. And then from there, we can learn to love the people around us. I think when my dad died, there's some fallout in parent-child relationships, and there's definitely friction with my mom over after my dad died, and that process, which was very painful, also made me a whole lot more aware of parental influence in my life, which makes me now more aware of my own influence over my kids' lives. And now it also makes me aware of the influence in the lives of the people around me. It's become clearer and clearer to me over time that the way we think about God and the way we think about our parents are intricately connected. And life is a journey of learning to see Jesus for who he is, compared to who we think he is, which is why parenting is so important and so powerful, because we have the opportunity to present the most accurate picture possible to our kids about who Jesus is. The way I act, the way you act, the way you interact with your children is where they get their number one idea, their number one notion about who God is. Now, we all fail. Like I've said a couple times today, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And there's no way we're going to do it perfectly. And that's the point of us going to our kids and saying, I'm sorry, I blew it. In this area, you were right and I was wrong, because now they can see, oh, dad needs forgiveness too. Mom needs forgiveness too. So when I need forgiveness, I don't have to feel shame over that. I need to deal with it just like mom and dad do. What do? They go and say they're sorry. How can mom and dad do that? Where do they find the strength, the humility to do that? We find it because mom and dad go to Jesus and they trust Jesus. I trust mom and dad like mom and dad trust Jesus. I can just go to Jesus when I make a mistake. That's the process of our kids learning to trust Jesus. And when we do that for our own kids, we can begin to do that for the people around us. Evangelism. I think we all need to become better evangelists. This has been my prayer, that the Lord would allow me to lead people into his kingdom. I've prayed with, a few people over my lifetime. I'm really ashamed at how few. And yet at the same time, I know that life in America is complicated. Church culture is complicated. We've made it such a thing that if you said a prayer or if you were baptized or whatever, once saved, always saved. That's kind of been, we've made it about being on the in crowd or the out crowd. I don't think that salvation is about being in the in crowd or about being in the out crowd. It's about being saved. It's about being rescued. It's about being healed. It's about being whole. If someone tells me I got saved when I was 17 and then they've been addicted to crack for the past 5 years, I'm saying, you've saved from what? You haven't been saved from your addictions. And if you haven't been saved from your addictions, you haven't been saved from whatever is driving your addiction. But addiction is the fruit of a sickness in the heart. It's not the sickness itself. And if we deal with the heart sickness, then the fruit will disappear. So if you tell me you're saved, but you live like someone who's enslaved to sin, there's no reason for me to believe that you're saved. And by that, again, when I say that, a lot of people's hair will stick up and say, oh wait, what are you saying, you can lose your salvation? Like that's not even the question. Jesus didn't come to give you a badge that says, I'm saved. He came to save you. And if you're still stuck in sin, if you're still in addiction, if you're still full of rage, you need to be saved. You need to be saved from your rage. You need to be saved from your addiction. You need to be saved from whatever lies you're believing. In a way, we all need saving every day. Which is why we need to read the Bible and look at it and see who Jesus really is and ask the big questions of life. What is Jesus doing? And what am I doing? Am I really doing life in the way that Jesus requires it? And as someone who lives a life of ministry, it's easy to believe, oh, well, Carl, of course he's living a godly life because he leads worship. He talks about the Bible. He leads Bible studies. But, take someone like Ravi Zacharias. That guy was brilliant. He knew scriptures well. He knew philosophy well. He could speak eloquently about Jesus. But he was an abuser and a sex addict. And I wouldn't want to be him on Judgment Day. Only God knows what that was like for him or what it will be like. I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, it's appointed for every man to die once, and then comes judgment. But when that judgment exactly happens, I don't know. As he's waiting for the resurrection, like Paul says, and where the righteous and the wicked will be judged. But the point is, he did some great things. He spoke about the truth, but he lived. He gave people hell. I mean, it's no small thing to abuse people sexually. That is creating hell for countless people. And he was addicted. He was a slave to those things. Ravi Zacharias, just because he spoke about Jesus well, still needed saving. And all of us need saving day in and day out. I think for me, what I use as a mirror for my life, as a measure for my life, are my kids and my wife. Our home. Is our home peaceful, joyful? Is it a place where people feel comfortable in the sense of when my kids go to bed, do they know that they're loved? Do they know that they're protected? Do they know that they're cared for? Because if I lose my temper and send them off to bed and tell them to shut up, stop crying, and then I never see them again until the morning, there's going to be serious insecurity that grows from that. And that insecurity is going to result in them bullying their siblings because they are trying to look strong instead of weak, because I made them feel insecure, which is weak and vulnerable. And so one sin leads to another. And if my house is not peaceful, if my house is not a place like a sanctuary of the peace of God, then there are things that I need to deal with. There are things that I need to be saved from. That's my mirror to measure myself. I think judgment comes to us in the present, in that way, where you could say, what will judgment be like in the future? When I die and stand before God, you can already begin to see that by your life right now. Ravi Zacharias had a great public image, but behind the scenes, his life was falling apart. His family knew it. He died of cancer, which is very likely a result of the life he was living. And I'm not saying that those things are one and one, that if someone has cancer, they have some hidden sin in their life. But I think it has been well documented that sin of various kinds can and does often lead to things like cancer. But his family relationships were falling apart too, because, be sure your sin will find you out. And it was finding him out. If my house is a place where my kids want to leave, if my kids are just chomping at the bit to leave when they turn 18, that's a judgment on me, because that means that my house is not a place of peace. That means that my house is not a place where they feel loved and they feel welcomed, that they feel listened to, or that they feel wanted. And that's my theme for today, because if a child feels wanted, they are not going to go far from home. And when these kids on these college campuses realize that they are wanted, even if their parents rejected them, even if they are suicidal because they never felt love, the gospel says God loved you so much that he gave his only begotten son. And we need to learn to read that and to explain to people that when God gave his only son, he was giving himself. God loved you so much that he gave himself, that whoever would believe in him would not perish and have eternal life. That is not, that eternal life isn't a disembodied bliss somewhere up in the sky. It is life. God gave himself so that you could be a full human being, fulfilling what God made you to do and to be. And we are living with a generation that needs to hear that message. But let that begin in your own home. I try to have that in my own home every day. And by God's grace, I believe that we're getting there. I believe that my kids do feel loved, do feel wanted, do feel accepted. And it's my goal to always keep it that way. I intend for my kids to be my best friends, not because I force them, but because they trust me. And they will trust me if they know I want them. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're watching, please take a minute to subscribe, leave a comment. If you're listening through iTunes, then take a minute to rate and review the podcast, because that will help more people find the podcast, and I'd appreciate it. All right, thanks for listening, guys. We will see you next week. And until then, join our Telegram channel, because I post every day, and we're having some really good conversations about what it means to be a man and to walk as a father of the faith. All right, God bless you.